Good afternoon, participants. I thank you all for joining. And today, in this afternoon session, we have with us Dr. Akhlaq Amin Wani. He is Associate Professor, Division of Natural Resource Management, Faculty of Forestry, Sher Kashmir, Agriculture Science, University of Agriculture Science and Technology. SAR is going to deliberate on geospatial tools for accessing forage resources with a focus on grassland and tree lands. Sir, please start the presentation. You have all the control. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Maj Saab. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers of this event, IGRFI, in collaboration with NADCL. Uh, with a special mention to Dr. Suhail Ahmed. Uh, I'll be deliberating on geospatial tools for assessing forage resources. So I'll be focusing mainly on grasslands, tree lands, and of course on some agricultural sources also, which are, you know, contributory source to forage resources. Now, first of all, there are various definitions which have come up over the period of time regarding grasslands. Some define it as vegetation cover, which is solely of grasses, having some shrubs, and trees are very rare. Some give that definition, which is where the moisture is sufficient and where climatic and anthropogenic activities prevent tree growth. And tree and the climate is that of between a desert and a forest. We may call that as a grassland. Some definitions put it like this: the vegetation which is dominated by grasses, and some of the woodlands or open woodlands or rangelands may also be a part of it, but not exceeding a certain limit. Now, UNESCO has similarly in 1979 defined it as herbaceous plants which has less than 40% tree cover. So in a nutshell, we can say it is mainly composed of grasses which may have tree lands, but not exceeding a certain limit. Now, these are some of the grasslands and fodder crops. Natural grasslands, we already know that, where there are unimproved species. And I hope the presentation is, slides are visible, Mr. Majid?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Natural grasslands. Then we have savanna, which have up to 40% of tree cover. We have sown pasture lands, where there is a competition with economically competitive crops, and we sow forage and we allow grazing in those sown pastures. Additionally, we also have fodder crops, which include rice, barley, legumes, oats, maize, also, which are a source of forage for our livestock. Additionally, as in the inaugural session, Honorable Vice Chancellor was chairperson of the this program, stressed on tree fodder sources, which in the Himalayan region, if we see, we have Bauhinia variegata, Grevia optiva, Celtis australis, in the low and mid Himalayan ranges, and in the upper Himalayan ranges we have Quercus floribunda and Quercus leucotrichophora, especially in the states of Himachal and Uttarakhand, which have very high fodder value and to meet the demand of growing livestock. And not only this, the trees, at the bottom, in the right corner at the bottom, you can see tree, which is a common scene everywhere in the autumn of the three states of hill states of Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal, and Uttarakhand. It also serves, as a place where we can store our herbage for the stress months. That's the months of winter. Now, grassland statistics. Grassland area is estimated as a whopping 52.5 million square kilometers, which forms 40.5% of the terrestrial area, excluding Greenland and Antarctica. And if we take that 40.5% as 100%, you can see how it is distributed by referring to this pie chart, wherein we have tundra 40%, woody savanna and savanna 34%, non-woody grasslands form 21%, and open and closed shrub lands form 31%. So quite a huge percent of area under grasslands, means the scope is huge, but it is still underutilized. Now, if we look at the global extent of grasslands, and if we see, I have encircled the areas in red, ovals, you can see the grasslands here. If you see, concentrate here on the brown color, and if you see it on the global map, you can see the distribution of these grasslands. These are the pure grasslands. You can see here in this region, the China part of China, majorly in the portion of China. Here it is in European countries, European grasslands. Here it is in Africa, southern African part, and here you can see it's in South America. So quite a diverse distribution of grasslands worldwide. Now, what about geospatial tools? How they are important in farming? Now, because grasslands, forage resources, either from trees, either from agriculture, either from any other vegetative sources, these form a part of farming. Now, precision agriculture is something wherein we use geospatial tools. Now, what is the concept in that? We utilize geographical information system to determine field variability, because we have a field which varies across latitude and longitude, and which varies from sea level to the top of the mountains. So there is a variability in that field. So based on the variability, the nutrient status and the chemical conditions of the soil also vary. So if we are required to give, in farming, we are required to give some kind of fertilizer input as the additional source to what is already there in naturally, or we have to give pesticides to stop the outbreak of disease or to control the disease. We will not give a flat recommendation for all the areas. We know that it has to be the recommendation has to be given as per the constituents of the soil, as per what actually it has in the soil and how we are. Now, geospatial tools are something which help us in determining what is there in the soil and how it is to be given in what quantity, saving a lot of time, energy, and money for us. Now, what is the need? Because need for this geospatial technology, you already know the importance of this geospatial technology. Need is because our land is degrading a lot. Our water sources are depleting. The socio-economic status, need for enhanced productivity. We have to enhance our productivity to make it sustainable for our upcoming growing unending population. Pollution, there's a lot of pollution we have because of unabated use of fertilizers. We have to limit the use of fertilizers, and this technology is going to certainly going to help us in the future. Now, once these things are addressed, productivity goes high, the quality of life and foods also increases, and we can say that we will in the times to come we can become food secure. Now, one of the aspects is also that we assess resources. We have different kinds of natural resources like forests, agriculture, horticulture, including grasslands. As we already see, 40.5% of the global terrestrial land is composed of grasslands. So it's a lot which can convert us, rather move our lands from underproductive to sustainable production. Now, benefits. What are the benefits? We can optimize our production efficiency, optimize quality. We can minimize environmental impact, minimize risks associated with respect to economy, with respect to environment. And there is a lot of information generated with such kind of geospatial technology. Once the information is generated, we know we can take decisions on the basis of those information. We know how much we have to produce this year because we have the information with us because of the farming, and with specifically with respect to this forage farming, we have remote sensing. One part is remote sensing, the second part is geographical information system, third is global positioning system, then we have variable rate technology, and finally we have yield monitoring. We will deal with all of these one by one. The time slot, it is 1 hour. I don't know whether I'll be able to finish up in 1 hour, but I'll definitely try. We are not going to be experts in the field, but it is just a kind of sensitization for you that you can apply all these things in your disciplines. Now, you already know remote sensing. When we see from a distance, we observe anything, any object, any area, or any phenomena from a distance without being in touch to that device or object or the phenomena. We call that as remote sensing. We see remotely, just like our eyes. We look at the mountains, we see it from a remote place. Our eyes act as remote sensors for to visualize that object. We imagine, we look at the picture of mountains without being in touch with that. Now, how does it work? Our eyes work. You already know that our eyes have the capacity to visualize in WebGire, visible spectrum, violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. But remote sensing has opened up the spectrum for us. While human eyes have a capacity to observe only in the limited portion, remote sensing has opened all this most parts of the electromagnetic spectrum, which comes from the sun's radiations and are received at the earth. They the sensors of remote sensing have the ability to to record the wavelengths which even doesn't fall in the visible region, which even fall beyond the visible spectrum. They can even visualize those. The limitations of human eye have been overcome by this technology, you can say. Now, what are the wavelengths? We as human beings, if you see the second line in the blue, this is the visible portion, 0.4 to 0.7 microns of wavelength. This is the human capacity to visualize things. Now, remote sensing has gone far beyond that. You already know about X-ray, because X-ray can't be very remotely. The wavelength is very less. We use it in medical appliances. You can see photographic, ultraviolet, visible, near and mid infrared, thermal infrared, and microwave or radar remote sensing. All these which have been highlighted in blue, these are the wavelengths which can be utilized for remote sensing and can discern some of the features of the Earth's surface which are normally a human unaided eye cannot see. Now, as already know, we have mobile phones at our home. We randomly click pictures, and sometimes we click 2 or 3 pictures, and 1 or 2 pictures come up very nicely, and some of the pictures have blurredness in it. Immediately, what we do, we immediately delete those pictures. Or at the most, if we have only one picture, what we do, we kind of run some filter over that photo to make it appear, to make it look more appealing, more attractive. So how does that blurredness came? It came because of the distortion, some kind of disturbance which has, when the image was clicked, it happened when we clicked that picture. Now, just like the same way, when satellites are placed in the atmosphere, they also click pictures, and while clicking those pictures, they may meet some of the disturbances in the atmosphere. The atmosphere may be in the form of particles, pure gas molecules, or some kind of dust particles, smoke, blaze. Now, depending upon the size of the particle that are in the atmosphere and that the electromagnetic radiations interact with, there are different scattering. We call that as Rayleigh scattering, Mie scattering, and non-selective scattering, depending on the, as it is depicted from the slide. You can see. Now, you already I don't know, some of you might know that the blue color of sky is due to the scattering in blue, because blue has the minimum wavelength and it scatters a lot. It has the scattering is inversely proportional to the wavelength. Blue scatters a lot because of its low wavelength. That is the only reason the sky appears blue. Now, moving to, this is the spectral reflectance curve. We know that our Earth's atmosphere is composed of mainly of 3 different things, which is the vegetation, water, and the soil. Now, looking at the Mr. Majid.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah.
Just a moment. Just a moment. I'd like to. There's a disturbance. I'll remove that disturbance.
Sure, sure.
Just a moment.
No problem. Please continue, sir.
Yeah, just a moment. I can't see my this.
Go to the presentation. It will. You are on, and presentation is on. Directly click on the PPT, and you can click next. Next. Go to the
Just,
slide show, sir.
yeah. Okay, is it visible? Hello?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, fine. So we have three main components: soil, vegetation. These are the reflectance curves, because as agricultural scientists, we are interested in vegetation. So look at the graph of the vegetation, where it is where is the reflection percent reflectance is the highest. We can see it is in the near infrared portion, and the red portion, near infrared, this portion we have. So we'll be looking for these wavelengths which can be useful for us in delineating some information from the satellite images, because whatever is reflected in this wavelength near infrared, where there is a peak for the reflectance, we'll be looking for those wavelengths. Those can be important in discerning, in estimating forage resources, in estimating forest resources, in estimating horticulture resources, in estimating agriculture resources. So whatever, if you are a hydrologist, you'll be looking for water. If you are a soil scientist, you'll be looking for the soil curve. So I hope you got the things, how you have to select which satellite data you have to use, which which bands you have to use, the bands which will have maximum information for you. That depends on the band in which in which wavelength that band has been captured. Now overall remote sensing system is like this. You can see A, B, C, D. A is the sun, where from electromagnetic radiation comes. B is the atmosphere, C is the ground, D is the remote sensing satellite which clicks the images of the earth. Now then we have a ground station here, you can see. Now we also have another GPS global positioning satellite system. This is a different kinds of satellite system which gives you the coordinates. The coordinates given by this satellite system are incorporated with the satellites which are clicked by the Earth observation satellites. Then only we can locate the position of the image or the coordinates of the image. This is how this. And then we have G is the computer aided system, the software and the hardware which we use in processing those images, or analyzing those images and getting generating the information in the form of maps, in the form of maps, and in the form of database which can be used for decision making. Then we have this output which is F, which may be maps or which may be the database. I'll be quickly going through some of the slides. This is the Indian remote sensing program, which has started as old as 1975 with the launch of Aryabhat, and today you can see there are a lot of satellite missions going on. Even we recently had a mission to Mars. So there are a lot of missions going on in this Indian space program. This is how the spatial resolution changed from 1 kilometer to 360 meter, 56 meter, 36 meter, 23 meter, 5.8 meter, and today we have sub-meter, means below 1 meter resolution images available with the Indian satellite system, or under the Indian imaging capability. This is list for actual data, and this is the actual sensor. You can see 72 meter resolution. This is list 2 camera and list 2 image with 36 meter resolution. This is list 3 camera with 23 meter resolution of the southern India. Probably this is the Hyderabad city. Then we have pan is panchromatic. It's a single band image, black and white image, but the resolution is quite high, 2.5 meter resolution, from which you can delineate a lot of things because the resolution is quite high. And then this is 188 meter WIFIS wide field sensor data. Then this is a very familiar image, Indian Peninsula and the adjoining Sri Lanka. This is also a wide field sensor image. And this is 5.8 meter list 4 data, which we most of the time in optical remote sensing we use this data for mapping of different resource vegetative resources, which may be forest, agriculture, horticulture, grasslands, or any other thing. Now, what the images Google is using is iKNOS, QuickBird, and WorldView. These are very high resolution images, below 1 meter resolution, and these are frequently used by our Google Earth, which we normally anytime browse to locate our house, to locate our office, to locate anything. This is iKNOS image of Dehradun. You can see the roadside plantations are also visible, roads are also visible, houses are also visible, grounds are visible, even the pitch within the cricket ground is also visible. Anything, agroforestry, urban forestry rather, you can say, the lines of trees along the parks, along the roads are quite visible in this. Even the crowns of those, we can measure the crown diameter also from there. This is the QuickBird image of a forest, spatial with 2 meter spatial resolution. Now, components, we move to, this was about remote sensing. We remotely get the images. The satellite clicks the images. Now we have, once the images are clicked and those are received at the ground station, now we order those images from that agency. Just like in case of India, we order those images from NRSC, National Remote Sensing Center, which is in Balanagar, Hyderabad. We because sorry, this is GIS. Sorry, the title is misleading. It should be Geographical Information System. It has been wrongly written as Remote Sensing System. So what is GIS? Is a computer-based system to aid in the collection. Once we got the data from remote sensing, we collect that data. Once the data is collected, we maintain that data. We maintain a repository of the data every 15 days. If we get the satellite data every 15 days, we collect that and maintain the repository and store it. And then when required, we analyze the data. But before analysis, we do the processing of the data. Some processing is done at the, once the data is acquired. The next second processing can also be done at the user level. Just like the photo, we click on the camera, we don't find the photo, we run a filter on all those things. We can similarly do in the case of satellite images. Now, then after analysis, we generate an output, and once the output is generated in the form of maps or in the form of a geospatial database, we can distribute the same data or maps to the concerned agencies or the line departments, which may be the agriculture department, which may be forest department, which may be fisheries department, which may be animal husbandry department. Call of any department, they can use that information, and on the basis of that information, they can have their annual budget plans, or they can have their 5-year plans, so that they can work towards the problems that have been highlighted in those outcomes. Now there are two types of data. You have to remember that one is geospatial data and other is non-spatial data. Spatial data always has the coordinates up in your mobile phone also. I am very sure that most of you will be having mobile phones which have been which have the facility of this coordinate system. You click any picture, you keep the geotagging on, you will be getting a latitude and longitude of that photo where it is taken. And immediately if you transfer that photo to your laptop and you have a link to Google Maps, it will also show you correctly where in the map also where the photo has been, exactly where the photo has been taken. So that is called as a geospatial data. Like we know, I'll give you an example. Like we have a hospital का अगर हम कोऑर्डिनेट जानना है, एक्स और वाई, लैटिट्यूड एंड लॉन्गिट्यूड, मैं जीपीएस लेके गया हॉस्पिटल के पास, मैंने जीपीएस ऑन किया, आई टुक द कोऑर्डिनेट, किसका लैटिट्यूड ये है, लॉन्गिट्यूड ये है और ऑल्टीट्यूड ये है, दैट इज जियोस्पेशियल डेटा, 3 डायमेंशनल डेटा मेरे को मिल गया कि इसका पोजीशन कहाँ पे. नाउ इट डजंट टेल यू एनीथिंग अबाउट द हॉस्पिटल. हॉस्पिटल कितने बेड का है, स्पेशलिटी हॉस्पिटल है, टर्शियरी हॉस्पिटल है, सेकेंडरी हॉस्पिटल है. Data, it becomes a wholesome data. Now it is spatial as well as non-spatial. Non-spatial information we have to collect from and associated it with the spatial data. I hope you're getting what I'm saying, everyone. Any 1 or 2 responses, so that I may not feel that I am going without
Yes, sir.
Anybody
Yes, sir.
understanding?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Understanding, sir.
Fine. Thank you. Yeah. Then we have kind of data models. There are two kinds of data models. One is vector data model and raster data model. Right? Uh, raster data model is your real Earth model. It's a real Earth model as how Earth looks like. Then when we click, then when we when we click a photo of the same real world from a like we click a picture from a mountain towards the valley itself is a real world. The photo that we click is a raster, and if we put a tracing sheet on that photo and we delineate all the features, like this is the building, this is the river nala going on, and I trace that on a butter paper, on a tracing paper, that tracing paper will form the vector data. I hope you got real world, raster is the photo, and vector is the traced features, which may be point, which may be line or a polygon. So raster data model is in the form of rows and columns. Vector data is in the form of X and Y. Now it's very difficult. I'll quickly move through because there are a lot of slides. This is just to give you preliminary information about GIS. We have all the data that we collect from the ground, like in case of grasslands, it's a huge area. Now, if there is any kind of a special tree in between, we want to preserve that, we don't want to cut that tree, we can take a coordinate from at that point, and we may call it a point feature. Now within the area, that's a polygon feature. Grassland is a polygon feature, and within that grassland is a tree, standing a tree. We took the coordinate of that tree also, we can call that as a point feature. Now if there is a nala going along across the grassland, we may depict it with the help of a line. We call that as a line feature. So every spatial information can be represented in three forms in a nutshell: point feature, line feature, and polygon feature. Now quickly moving to GPS, most of you have been to fields when you for soil surveys, for forest surveys, for grassland surveys, any kind of survey. You always take GPS receiver with you. You take positioning, but have you ever thought how does this work? How we have been able to get the these readings, X and Y readings? It's a different constellation of satellites, which is composed of 24 satellites consistently moving around the Earth, taking taking rounds around the Earth. 24 satellites. It was initially started by USA, then with the help of with the name Navstar or GPS, then former USSR also developed GLONASS, its own satellite system of 24 satellites. Now India recently has also launched a series of satellites. Now I think 8 satellites are into taking rounds in the global position, for getting these coordinates, and it has to reach to 24 to get the data globally. Now because India right now only has 8 satellites which are moving around the Indian subcontinent, we get the data, we can provide this positioning service in the Indian subcontinent only. At the most you can say India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Burma, Nepal, to this. Now once the satellite number is increased to 24, we may have a global this positioning service. Now why the reasons we use GPS? Navigation in any field. Now any car is equipped with a GPS receiver with a monitor, and when you move on the road, you are fully aware with the help of GPS that which road you have to take. It even with the help of the technology integrated with Google, it also tells you which streets are congested, which will take you higher time and which will take you lower time, or something like that. And moreover, the second thing we use GPS is for getting the coordinates. You are in a survey, you want where you have taken the data, you immediately take out the GPS, take the reading, record it, and then you can later on find out where you have taken the reading. Now how does it function? This is the window. You can see this is the window, which when you open any GPS, you will find this is the sky plot, and these circles, dark circle, gray circle, and black circle, these represent the satellites. Now the color represents the strength of the signal. Black means it has completely received the signal. Gray means it is about to receive the signal, and blank means it has not received the signal. This is how it looks like. These are the commercially viable GPS devices ranging from 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 up to lakhs, 8 lakh, 10 lakh rupees. Also, you get different high-end GPS, which we call as digital differential GPS services. Then I already talked about this GPS and GLONASS and how it of a person where the person is standing. Now, minimum you have to remember minimum 4 satellites signals are required to determine the position. If the strength of satellites on your GPS receiver is less than 4, the reading will not be accurate. Only 3 receivers or only 3 satellites are required to have a reading. You will get reading only after receiving signal from 3, but the 4th one is required for time accuracy, because these normal devices they don't have the atomic clocks, but the satellite which is giving you the signals, those are equipped with high-end, very costly with the user segment, means you and me as a person who is holding the device, GPS device. There's a control segment, like there's a station where from all the 24 sets are being controlled, like in California or in any other place, or in Colorado in USA, which is which is the control segment for a GPS, and the user segment, which is persons like you and me, researchers like you and me, who go to the field and use GPS for such kind of things. Now you have variable rate technology. Variable rate technology, using sensors. You might have observed, many of you might have observed at IARI, there are in agrophysics department, there are various equipments which run on the basis of sensors. Now likewise, farmers know, because of their traditional knowledge which they have acquired over the period of time. They have the knowledge, but they don't know how to interpret that knowledge. But you and me as a scientist, we can gather that information and we can interpret that information. That's why he seeks your advice, he seeks my advice. Otherwise, he may know better than us, but he doesn't know how to interpret the things. He knows when to give the fertilizer, he knows when to give the pesticide, he knows how much to give, but he doesn't know why I am doing this. Because you and me as a scientist, we can interpret those things very nicely. So this is how we can contribute towards him using this technology. So why precision agriculture? We have to maximize that, because the population is ever increasing. We are already, this is an old slide, 7 billion, we are already 7.5 billion right now. We have to maximize our profits. We have reduce inputs, fertilizer quantity, जितना जरूरत है हम उससे ज़्यादा use कर रहे हैं, and it all goes waste. वेस्ट इस सेंस से भी हो गया कि इंडस्ट्रीज भी उसको मैन्युफैक्चर करने में ज्यादा टाइम लगता है, पोल्यूशन भी होता है, एंड इट इज टेकिंग you are giving more inputs and you are wasting those resources without in fact those are damaging to the field. We have to reduce the stress, we have to protect the environment, and moreover we have to feed the unending population. The current precision methods which are being practiced include soil sampling, because like agriculture crop, we raise fodder crop, we also, because those are exhaustive crops, those require high doses of nitrogen, and we have to give, and other fertilizers, we have to give this fertilization. But if it is sensor based, if it is based on soil sampling, if it is based on yield mapping, how much yield we are going to predict in different patches, we are certainly going to save our pocket, our time and our energy using this technology. How soil sampling? We do grid sampling, topography soil sampling, to see the variability, so that accordingly the doses can be recommended. And we have a soil, those are soil scientists, they may very well know that we have various soil measuring soil sensor chart. On the basis of the greenness, we may recommend the sensors, and this is not about the greenness, this is about the electrical conductivity. electrical, whatever the electrical, it has sensors which directly measures the electrical conductivity of the soil once it moves across it. Now once the sensor moves across it, it gives you the EC. Now where the EC values are less or high, it gives you, it automatically devises a dose. What is the dose to be given? This is called, this is what we do in precision farming. Now it can be sensor based also, using this is something which is field based. We have an equipment which has a sensor, that it's also a remote sensor, remotely placed, maybe a few meters away, but it still is a remote sensing sensor. Now we may have sensor based, means satellite imagery. The satellite is at a far off place, very far, maybe 800 kilometers above the surface of the earth. We have an aerial imagery, the images which have been taken using drones, which have been taken using aeroplanes or by using choppers, or we have a land-based imagery. Land-based imagery are the high platforms. Those are the crane-like structures, platforms on which are very high, about 100-meter high or 150-meter high, on which a sensor is placed, and it takes picture of the field, overall field, and it tells you how much carbon, how much wetness, how much greenness is there, using a technique called as NDVI, normalized difference vegetation index, by health of the crop. Then we have canopy sensor. Crop canopy sensor research was initiated in 1993. You might have used these kinds of these instruments in your field, and mobile. These are the mobile devices which are very useful to see productivity of the crop, photosynthesis, chlorophyll content of the crop. But the problem is that we use sun's energy in estimating all those things. And if it's a cloudy, it's a rainy day, and there are clouds, such kinds of things become very difficult for us to execute. Now, that vegetation reflects, as we already, when we saw the vegetation reflectance curve, we observed that the vegetation reflects in near infrared and infrared, but our eyes cannot see that because it is beyond red. Our eyes have the capacity to watch things only from V to R, red. But farmers largely base their assessment for the vigor of the crop on the base of greenness. They believe that the maximum greenness shows the crop is very vigorous, and if there is anything like chlorosis, like yellowing, they immediately recognize there is some problem with the crop. So in the eyes of the farmer, greenness means healthy, and if there is any problem with the greenness, that means there is some problem with the crop. But remote sensing goes beyond that. We have treatment rates. You can see this chart starting from light yellow towards dark green. This can indirectly speak of nitrogen status. You can see in the first one or three color tones, the nitrogen status is very less, and in the last three tones, the nitrogen content is similar. The nitrogen content is similar. Canopies. Okay. Now sometimes this greenness gets distorted by the reflectance from the soil. Like we have a crop, the soil is also visible. The wavelengths may get reflected from the vegetation, which may be purely infrared reflected, or may express. But if reflectance gets mixed up from the soil, it may give you an impression that your crop is not healthy. But actually the problem is there is a mixed reflectance coming from the soil, which is dampening the effect of the healthy reflectance, which comes from the chlorophyll of the crop. So we have to take care of that. We have to see those things. Now, if you see this, if you observe this diagram from May to September, this is your wheat. Now, in the early growing stages, you can see the requirement, seasonal nitrogen uptake. You can see the curve. It tells you how much of the nitrogen, and you can see in the middle portion 70 to 80% of the requirement of the nitrogen. And now when tessellation occurs, there is a constant decline. there's a constant decline in the fertilizer application with respect to nitrogen. So these things are done with the help of the sensors like this. Now the crop is not very high. You can see the vehicle equipped with a sensor is moving across the maize crop, and it has sensors placed on it, and it also has a tank with the fertilizer having nitrogen. It moves across the crop, and on the basis of that greenness, it injects the fertilizer towards the crop. Now where it finds that the reflectance is not very good, not very promising, it will inject appropriately the calibrated dose of the required nitrogen fertilizer. Now once the crop gets higher, the platform has to be moved up. Now you can see there are hydraulic this jacks, you can see, which push the vehicle up, and ultimately the sensor also moves up. As the crop grows, it again moves across the crop and does the same thing as the crop advances. This is how it the injects crop circle sensors. You can see the sensors are placed on this on this platform, and there's a variable rate of nitrogen injection towards the crop. Now on the basis of this, we can also develop a map like this. You can see there are three colors: green, red, and blue. And you can see less than 10% off rate application. It gives you the, on the basis of the status of the soil, on the basis of the status of the crop, it gives you the application less than 10%. Target rate is 10%, which is your green color, and there is red color, which shows you that in these areas you have to give more than 10% of the fertilizer application. This is how you have developed a map for variable rate of injection of fertilizer. Now accordingly, you can develop this kind of map, where you see the one color depicts one fertilization level, red depicts one fertilization level, and green represents one fertilization level. Now last one is your yield monitoring. We monitor the yield, we develop maps, and on the sample basis we can take some samples, and like in 1 by 1 meter or 5 by 5 meter or 10 by 10 meter through destructive sampling, we can estimate how much we have produced. And accordingly, if we have a map, land use land cover map for the grasslands, for the forest crops, for the agriculture, we can estimate the production over the whole area using satellite imagery, using aerial photography, using electrical conductivity, using in-field infrared chlorophyll meters, crop height monitoring. All these things are used in tandem or in coordination or in individually for developing different kinds of maps. Now this is your Google Earth zone maps, satellite of different spatial resolutions. What are the potential software that you use in precision agriculture? ArcGIS, it's a mapping software. Then you have ADAS Imagine, it's a remote sensing software. In ArcGIS, we do mapping, we generate geospatial maps, we generate geospatial database. Then we have an open software which is not paid, it is QGIS, openly available, anybody can use that. Then we have ER Mapper, MapInfo, AutoCAD. There are several, in addition to, there are several dozens of software which you can use for different kinds of mapping and assessing the different kinds of resources, how much we have, and mapping all those. Now we have applications in weed management. We can detect weeds from the main either agricultural crops or fodder crops. We can detect the weeds. We can have plant image analysis and measure the structure. We can do weed mapping, and we can apply herbicides, electricity, heat, etc. directly to the meristem. This is how the weed management goes. You can see this is the weed detection. Now this if appropriately the wavelengths are chosen, it can detect between a weed and a non-weed. So we can target the weed only. These are the weeds you can see here, and it has not targeted. Now once you move the sensor across on a platform across the field, it will detect what are weeds and what are not weed based on artificial intelligence also. if your equipment has been calibrated with respect to those. If we calibrate the images of weeds to the sensor, it will automatically detect which is a weed and which is not a weed. Ultimately, when it has to inject a weedicide, it will target only the weeds and not the main crop. Now, yield monitoring is also done by this. If we have a satellite image like me, give me any area, I will tell you what is the stock in that, how much forage resources we have. It may be in the form of tons, it may be in the form of area that has been covered. Now, this is NDVI. NDVI is Normalized Difference Vegetation Index. It's an index which in satellite images using different band combination we use to estimate the density of the vegetation, where the vegetation is very dense. It may be forage, it may be grasslands or any other forage resource like trees, grasses, shrubs, or legumes, anything. We get the image, we get different bands, and we run this formula, we run this model, NIR minus IR upon NIR plus IR, means near infrared minus infrared upon near infrared plus infrared. We run this formula and we get an image like this. You can see reddish tone में बहुत ज़्यादा red से बहुत light red की तरह बहुत सारी tones हैं इसमें. वो tones कितनी हैं, we will not discuss it that, because that speaks of radiometric resolution, कि उसमें कितनी tones visible होंगी depends on the radiometric resolution of that image. We will not talk about that here, but it directly gives जहाँ पे जितना red है वहाँ पे उतना high yield है, जहाँ पे जितना, this is NDVI. NDVI gives you the vegetation ka depth, density. This NDVI has been converted into a colored map, wherein you can see blue area which represents high density, bright dark color tone of red. This is your high productivity, high yield, and the low tones of red are the low yield categories. This is how we'll do it. Crop assessment, crop health. जितना crop का health अच्छा होगा उतना reflectance high होगा. जितना crop का health कम होगा, leaf में dryage होगी, leaf में damage होगा, stress होगा, तो उतना reflectance आपका गिर जाएगा. So you can distinguish healthy forage from a damaged forage. Now, thickness of the leaf also. Some fodder crops have thick leaves, some have thin leaves. Thick leaves में reflectance ज़्यादा होगा, thin leaves में reflectance कम होगा. This will give you one of the characteristics to distinguish between the crops. Now you can also assess the disease. Chlorosis में chlorophyll जो है that gets deteriorated, or if a fungus develops on the leaves, it will not give you a good tone. Chlorosis leaves won't give you a good tone. Of water stressed crops will not remain green, the leaves will turn pale, and immediately if we take an image, remote sensing image, it will not give the same reflectance as the healthy leaves give. And if it is damaged by insects, means you have lost the chlorophyll, the reflectance won't be as high as in a healthy crop. This is the organic matter. आपको organic matter भी का map भी develop कर सकते हैं. Similarly, we can develop moisture map. कहाँ पे moisture ज़्यादा है, कहाँ पे moisture कम है. जो कम moisture वाले area है, we can irrigate those, and जो जिनमें already sufficient moisture है, we don't require irrigation in those areas. Likewise, we have organic matter. Organic matter में भी we don't recklessly give recommendations for organic matter addition everywhere. But if it is given on the basis of some geospatial data which has been developed, it is better we save our resources, our time, our energy, our money, and not let it go waste. We also have interpolation of the data, because remote sensing is not a magic wand. It will give you it will not give you the ready solution to everybody. You have to feed the data to get the data. If you feel trash, it will give you the trash. You have to feel the data accurately with a high precision. It will give you something that is worth it. We have to collect the data most of the time. Soil scientists, we collect the data from different parts of the area. Like in this diagram, it is shown that we have collected the data from different point sources, but we don't know the values which are in between those points. So we have a technique called as interpolation. You might have studied this in mathematics, in your statistics. to find the intermediate values. We also have a technique in remote this GIS, where we have a field data which is not in continuum. We can use that data to interpolate, and we can get a continuum map like this, wherein we have the ranges. In addition to the points, we have now have the ranges, where which area कितनी प्रोडक्टिविटी है, जो जिस कलर में फॉल करता है उसका लेजेंड नीचे दिया हुआ है. वी कैन इमीडिएटली से दैट दिस रीजन has is deficient in something, some nutrient, or this region is quite having quite an optimum amount of nutrient. Now accordingly we estimate some trends and relationships using different kinds of data that we get from remote sensing, processing, analyzing, and in combination with the field data. We also do crop identification assessment, and national level mein ye cheezein ki ja sakti. This is not our work. I'll show you later on what kind of work we have done till now. Quite a few slides from there, but this is also at country level something is done. That for all the crops identification is done कि किस एरिया में, किस स्टेट में कितनी क्रॉप्स ग्रो कर रही हैं, कितनी स्केल पे ग्रो कर रही है, कितना प्रोडक्टिविटी एस्टिमेटेड है, कितना प्रोडक्शन एस्टिमेटेड है, और अकॉर्डिंगली बजट प्लानिंग किया जाता है ताकि हमें कितना वीट अगर इस बार इतने स्टेट्स में उगाया जा रहा है, किस लेवल पे उगा रहा है, कितनी वेराइटीज है, कितना एक्सपेक्टेड आउटटर्न है, सो हमें कितना इंपोर्ट करना पड़ेगा या हम कितना एक्सपोर्ट कर पाएंगे. दिस इज हाउ योर जियोस्पेशियल डेटा हेल्प्स यू इन टेकिंग डिसीजंस, planning your import and export at the country level. Now measuring tree heights में this is the one of the upcoming technologies. Tree heights में आप देखेंगे इसमें ये this is lidar remote sensing, laser based. ये laser based ड्रोन से भी ले जा सकते हैं, ये एरियल प्लेटफॉर्म से भी ले जा सकते हैं, और नॉर्मली अभी इन्हीं दो प्लेटफॉर्म से ये सारी चीजें ली जा रही हैं. उसमें लेजर का पल्स इज thrown, it's an active remote sensing from a radar or or a drone on which a radar is placed, or any flying object. वहां से लेजर का पल्स भेजा जाता है. The pulse is geometric responsive, like if it strikes the top of the tree, some may pass to the second branch, some may pass to the third branch, others may get reflected from the above surfaces, and there is also something like which may go to the grassland level, fodder level, agricultural level. So this is also one of the things by which we can estimate height of the tree, or we can have a digital surface level. We can remove all the trees in this using this kind of softwares, and we can have a ground level. We can बोल सकते हैं कि कितने एरिया में आपका grasses है और कितने एरिया में आपकी trees है using this technology, and estimating the height of the trees very accurately, which optical remote sensing and other kinds of remote sensing have not been able to do it till now. But lidar in that case, estimating the height of the tree has been is looking very promising. You have unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, low-cost cameras are placed on drones or unidentified aerial vehicles. They also click images. They also take images which can be used for different kinds of assessments of agriculture, horticulture, grasslands. This is how it goes. It forms as high density structure of points, and virtually you can see top right bottom में आप देखेंगे कि virtually a forest is created. This is not actually a forest का image नहीं है, forest की photo नहीं है. This is जो laser की beam से जो points का एक scatter बना है, उसका ये points का image है. उसकी वजह से एक recreate, ये एक forest recreate हुआ है. And you can remove each and every, you can remove the trees, you can move through it. And this is, you can see here, you can this is the image which I'm talking about, and this is the density of points which is at the ground level. Means अगर ये ऊपर tree है तो नीचे chances हैं कि grasses हो सकती हैं. These are the reflections, point reflections from the ground. This is how it is done. Now I have completed my portion, just giving you a glimpse of what we do at the Faculty of Forestry, Scotch Kashmir, or what we have done till now at a very small scale. This is not something, this is just to give you an idea that if anybody wish to work in that in this direction, he may take a clue that how to go about it. See, this is the biophysical modeling using NDVI, which we talked about. This is one of our work where we have biomass carbon निकाल रहे हैं हम इसमें using NDVI approach. This is some relations have been worked out. This is agricultural mapping and monitoring. 1980 से लेके 2009 तक की सारी एग्रीकल्चर मॉनिटरिंग है. You can see the grassland वाला पोर्शन भी आप इसमें डिलीनिएट कर सकते हैं, एरिया निकाल सकते हैं, कितनी भी मतलब निकाला है हमने ऑलरेडी, वी हैव डन इट, कि कितना है इसमें, राइट फ्रॉम 1980 1992 यूजिंग multiple dates or multiple date satellite imageries. This is how we interpret it. Grassland, you can see D, you can see pink color on the satellite image. This pink color, if you concentrate here, this is all grassland, this pink color. And similarly, you have kharif and a double crop. Agriculture, this is in the highlands, and in agriculture, if you have forage planted as agricultural crop, planted as it will give you the same text, same tone. Same tone means same color, but the difference is that it looks like it is across the mountains, and it there is no habitation around, there is no agroforestry around. So probably with the help of ground truthing, with the help of Google maps and all the high resolution images, you can certainly say that this is not the cultivated agriculture and cultivated forage crop. These are the natural grasslands. So you can always estimate the area, or with the help of sampling you can estimate the whatever you say, volume, biomass in tons, kgs, whatever you want, if you are in that direction. This is Pir Panjal range, and you can see these two maps, 2003 and 2013, and you can see these are the changes. If you concentrate on this oval, if you concentrate on this, you can see the same in 2003 has changed. Yellow color is your agriculture. The agriculture has changed to what is your green. Green is your horticulture. So this much a portion from agriculture has gone, and it has been converted to agriculture. This is the area around your SIT, this your IGFRI. Near that area, there's a lot of land which used to be agriculture earlier, but maybe due to scarcity of water or horticulture being high remunerative, people have been shifting from it has been an observing trend that from past 20-30 years, people have been majorly transforming agriculture into horticulture. This is how it has been. Now you can see agriculture has been changed, and there is a negative change in the agriculture. 2,276 hectare of agriculture has been lost. Forest also, some portion has been lost. Wetlands in this is Pir Panjal, including some parts of the Srinagar. Some wetlands have also been lost. You can see the agriculture is negative. This is towards the negative side. You can see agriculture -2276. This is how that changed. Now we have different kinds of terms like land shrinking, land degradation, land shrinking, conversion, deforestation. This is all what it has been going in this region. This is how forests have also been damaged due to deforestation and degradation. This you can see here. See, if you the circle has been moved here, the forest can be seen. This is whole patch of forest, but here you can see no forest. The forest is entirely gone. This is how in JV division, that was in Pir Panjal. This is in JV division forest. Baramulla, likewise, agricultural land has changed. If you see these oval circles, we have this is dynamics map. Now green tells you what has remained static over the period of 30-40 years, and yellow tells you what has positively changed, and green tells you what is open forest which has remained static, and red tells you what has changed negatively. Means vegetation was there and it has now changed. Vegetation, I mean to say forest. It may have changed. It may have been changed to horticulture. It may have been changed to agriculture, or it may have been changed to wasteland. These are some some maps, different kinds of maps regarding in different districts. In Dachigam National Park, in Anantnag district, in Dachigam National Park, like soil organic carbon map, land use land cover map, soil organic carbon map, biomass carbon map, all these maps which have been developed. This is predictive modeling. One of our old studies was carried out in Uttarakhand on experimental basis. Like it predicts. The study was conducted in 2010. You can see the things have been predicted with the ongoing set of conditions, with the ongoing set of spatial way, changes that took place in the past 20-30 years. It was predicted what is going to be in 2030. So we predicted a map for 2030 also. Now you can see in district Ganderbal, trees outside forest, and you can see agriculture. It may also have forage crops, 7.18%. Grasslands, 9.78% in district Ganderbal. Trees outside forest, which may be a source of tree fodder, 6.77%. So in any district, you can say how much of agriculture we have in percentage or in area, in hectares, and now how much of it can be harnessed as forage crops in agriculture, in grasslands, as well as in trees. Similarly, you have, this is trees outside forest map. This was land use land cover map and land use land cover map and forest cover map. Now you have this tree TOF map of Ganderbal. You can see you have other classes: boundary plantation, horticulture. Other classes: riverside plantation, roadside plantation, scattered patches, woodlots, and most of them can contribute to tree forage resources. Like this is also a promising, to in hilly states of J&K, Himachal, and Uttarakhand, especially tree fodder resources have a huge potential and a huge, huge potential to be harnessed as fodder crops, fodder species. This is LULC of part of Srinagar city. You can see this is your agriculture, 17.23%. Quite impressive, because that agriculture mostly confines to the wetland areas, and there is urban forest also. These can also be tree fodder, harnessed as tree fodder from urban resources. Now this is the TOF, trees outside forest map, and can be a source of tree fodder. This is of whole district Srinagar. That was of Srinagar city only, and you can see how agriculture, TOF, and grassland especially are distributed across the whole district. And this is how it has changed. These are two maps, 2007 and 2017. I'm toggling between the two. You can see how things are changing. So this is the status: agriculture, TOF, and all these things in 13.58%, 8.2%, 25%. This is the TOF map of Srinagar and how it has changed from 2007 and 2017. You can see the changes, how it is changing. So you can have assessment for all the things. This is betula, one of the crops in high, along the tree line. After this, the tree line starts, no tree can be seen afterwards. In district Ganderbal, we also estimated this, that you see betula 1.97%, or this much 6,746 hectare. It is in high altitudes, in conditions of J&K, this species has also a fodder value. It has a nutritive value and is highly consumed for fodder resources in the higher reaches. So we also mapped the areas where this fodder resource is available. These are the some of the ground truth points that we have taken across the area. This is in the northern region of Kashmir. Earlier we had some slides in the southern region. This is from the northern region. You can see the distribution of grasslands and trees outside forests. Gives you an idea of these resources. This is your forest type species map, forest cover density map, and these are some pictures for biomass carbon evaluations, which was a part of a project which we have concluded already. This is again of district Ganderbal, the pie chart depicting the distribution of grasslands, TOF, which can be used as a forage resources, some of the ground truthing which has been done, and some of the data regarding the same. Then forest density, we already talked about this. These are some of the publications in this endeavor. We have come up some of the publications over the period of time, doing a little bit on that also. And that's it. Thank you for your kind attention. I hope you got what I wanted to convey or what was expected of me. I don't know that. If you have any questions, you are most welcome to ask.
Please ask any questions you may have. Hello, any questions?
Yes, you can ask any question regarding anything, remote sensing, GIS, assessment, or whatever.
Anyone?
Are there any questions in the
I
chat
have a
box?
question. No, I don't think there are questions, but I have a
Okay.
question. In fact, I have something to ask you about because me myself being a student of computer science and multidisciplinary research, I
Right.
had an idea, sir. I talked about because, sir, since you are from the faculty of forestry, and I was
Right. Right.
thinking about in Kashmir, we always talk about Chinar being the symbol of Kashmir. It represents somehow the culture of Kashmir.
Right.
We have worked towards protecting it. Let me stop recording because I'm going to show you my project also. I've been working on it. Maybe you can
Right.
guide me better in some direction. Let me stop
Right.
recording. If there are any questions, please ask. Then otherwise, I'm going to consume time. If there are any questions.
Hello, sir.
Yeah. 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 Please.
Sir,
Hello.
my question will be at the end.
Sir. Sir.
Yeah, please go
Sir.
ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, please
Yeah.
go ahead.
Please. Please ask Dr. K. Tejaswar
Sir.
Rao. Dr. Rao.
Sir. Yeah. Yeah. Sir. Sir, is there any seeding for no our for grasslands development? Is there any aerial seeding or any GAS geological
I
geospatial
can't hear.
energies used seeding for increasing the grasslands in a country basis or
Yeah.
regional state basis?
Yeah. Yeah, although the voice was broken, but I got what you mean to say, that if there is any program which is being run like aerial seeding, there have been certain attempts from different governments, like for denuded hills, where they in the time of monsoons they would take a chopper and they will take the seeds, and they will run the chopper over those denuded hills or those barren lands, wastelands,
Yes, sir.
immediately after the rains, and they will throw that seed. They will throw that seed, aerial dispersal of seeds towards that mountain, towards that barren hill or wasteland, and these things have been done on experimental basis, but it has not been, unfortunately, this has not been incorporated as a regular thing
Yes.
which can be done. But yes,
Yes.
it has been done on the experimental basis. Yes.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Any other question?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Yeah, please.
I have a small submission, Dr. Saab. How do you correct the inaccuracies that come in between during the course of your recording this data on account of these weather disturbances?
On account of these weather disturbances.
Yeah.
See, when image is clicked by a satellite, it is received at the ground station. Ground station in Indian context, I will see it is received at NR. If it's an Indian remote sensing satellite, the data is collected. The satellite data, I mean satellite. When I talk of satellite data, I mean satellite image. The image is collected at the station, which is located at Hyderabad. Now they do the initial corrections. All those corrections, which may be radiometric, which may be geometric, or which may be mainly radiometric and geometric. Now radiometric means if there, due to weather disturbances, if there is a loss of signal in between. Now there are some various different kinds of techniques running, different kinds of filters running, different, there are some missing values are being filled on the base of interpolation. They do these such kind of corrections at these radiometric and geometric corrections at the station level only, NR center level only, just like NRSC. To the user, they give the corrected data, which has been corrected for the errors. Now, once the data is reaches to us, it doesn't have all those inaccuracies which you are talking about. Those have been already removed at the purchasing level. When you purchase the data, before that the agency does that. Now, when the data reaches to me, I find they have done the correction, but it is not my as per my desire. Now, with the given set of software I do have, just like remote sensing, it has some modules in that wherein we can do such radiometric corrections, geometric corrections, like we can increase the contrast, we can find the missing values, we can lessen the effect of clouds. There is a provision for that in using those softwares. We can do that. Yes, I hope you got it.
One more submission is, how good is this microwave sensing?
Yes, microwave sensing is definitely an answer to this cloud-free data.
Yeah.
Now, because when you look for optical remote sensing, you have only a very short window, October and November. October and November in Kashmir conditions or all over India, you can say, is the best season when you can we can acquire a cloud-free image. Now, the answer for this is the microwave data, which you are talking about, active remote sensing data. It doesn't just like in this aerial aeroplanes radar technology is used. Likewise, in for crops to work in every season, April, March, without having to keep clouds in mind, we can always work on microwave data. But the only thing is the data is sufficiently not available for all the regions as the optical data is, but certainly a lot of work is going on using this microwave remote sensing data, and we can use it across all the seasons without having the problem of clouds. Because it penetrates the clouds, it doesn't form the image of the clouds. It is a cloud-free image. Yes.
Right. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. Any other question?
Any other question, please? So shall I continue with my question then?
Yes, please, you can carry on.
Sir, so regarding the Chinar, which I have talked about being the symbol of Kashmir and J&K, so to say, there have been steps taken and there has been people talking about it. Has government, so to say, a record of how many Chinars exactly we have, or what is the status, what is their age? Has some work been done on that? Like you showed map of forests, but we do not per se know the Chinar's population.
Right, exactly.
Or for that matter, even location. Even if we have laws protecting Chinars, we cannot chop a Chinar down. But since there is no data available, government cannot claim, okay, there was a Chinar here, you have cut it down. It is only for the police and tells. Sir, in this regard, may I show something? I'll ask you, who do I basically approach in taking this project further? Let me stop.
Okay, before this